A little background on myself. I was raised Catholic my whole life, but when I reached the age of 16, I started smoking weed. It was the first substance I used, and I still struggle with quitting it to this day. Around the time I was also questioning my religion and was starting to see the inconsistencies and contradictions in the beliefs. My biggest problem is that they put an ego onto God. Now don't get me wrong, I respect everyone's opinions and beliefs, it's just not for me. I quit going to church at 17 and moved out the next year. Religion was forced upon me so much growing up that I eventually gave up on it and wanted nothing to do with God or religion. My life went on okay and eventually got a girlfriend, a nice welding job, and an apartment with a cat. To my surprise, my old friend and I bumped into each other for the first time in years, and he offered me mushrooms. They were psilocybin cubensis and I decided to get 10 grams before he ran out. After a few days of preparing, I took around 2.5 dried grams in my room with my girlfriend as my sitter. I had a very magical time walking around, looking at everything coming to life. I also closed my eyes while laying down. This was where the real magic was. I had a great time exploring the recesses of my mind, but the effects wore off soon after. Seeing how shrooms affect your mind, I was very curious to see what lay waiting to be discovered in future trips. Since the trip wasn't as long or as strong as I wanted, I took 4 or 5 grams at my apartment about 6 months later. This was a very high dose as it is, however, as I would come to find out, these particular mushrooms were very visual. More visual than any mushroom I've eaten since. I washed the mushrooms down with water in my room and started to prepare. I was aware of the intelligence of the mushroom, so I got my notebook and wrote down questions I might want to have answered. As I scribbled in my notebook, it started to hit me. It felt like gravity got twice as strong. I felt very sluggish and heavy. All I wanted to do was lie down, but I was occupied with writing my questions and getting into comfy shorts. As I was almost finished, I felt something tell me to hurry up. Lay down, close your eyes and shut up. It was a very eager and humorous request. I didn't know who or what it was, but I felt a presence. I got in bed and closed my eyes, only to be greeted by dancing and swirling colors. I watched the patterns of neon lines and lights swirl around against a black background for a while. I then saw 3 neon light faces smiling at me in a triangle formation. Their smiles radiated pure love and I felt comforted. Their smiles widened as I relaxed, and I found myself being pulled through the middle of them down a tunnel made of these neon lights. I traveled slowly, and I suddenly saw a light at the end of the dark tunnel. It grew larger and brighter as I got closer, eventually revealing a bright green landscape. It looked like a field or yard with 3 trees and a little blue river shaped like an S going from side to side. This field was rectangular and had rock walls on all 4 sides of the field extending up. It was like a big rectangular chunk was cut straight down into a mountain, and at the bottom was this field. As soon as I saw this field, I realized that it was more beautiful than anything I have ever seen before. There are no words to describe how beautiful this simple little field was. The colors of this place were just like earth vegetation, except the lighting was different. I can't put my finger on it, but the light was so bright and vibrant. It was as if I was seeing color for the first time, and it was the most incredible visual I have ever seen. Not only that, but I also recognized this place like I had been here before. It felt like I was home. Like really home. I knew I recognized this place from before I was a human, and I knew I would return here. The next thing I remember is seeing these 3 light beings. They had a humanoid shape but no faces, clothes, or genders. They were just this bluish white light. As soon as I saw these beings, I can recall saying, "I remember you. Oh my God, I remember you." We rushed together and hugged. I remembered these people from before I was human as well. My whole life I had no idea these beings existed, and now I can never forget. The best analogy I could use to describe how it felt would be Peter Pan. Imagine you were in Neverland with your best friends for countless years, having the time of your life. As you eventually end up on Earth for one reason or another, you forget all of the amazing times you had. When you return to Neverland, all of the memories, joy, and magic come flooding back in one big tidal wave. The feeling is overwhelmingly beautiful and peaceful. The light beings and I all shared the intense love, joy, and excitement of seeing each other again. The only thing I remember them telling me was, "This is where you will go when you die." I can still hear those exact words like it was yesterday. I cannot say how long I conversed with the beings of light, but I remember turning my attention to the left and I saw a huge entity with sun rays like tentacles radiating from its form. It was morphing and changing, not in impossible ways, but very confusing and complicated ways. I was face to face with this morphing being, and I remember asking questions such as, "Who are you? Where am I?" and much more. I don't remember any of the responses, unfortunately. The next thing I remember, I was in a world that seemed identical to the large being. It was like I went to its own world. The entire landscape of this place was morphing colors. The 4 colors I remember were red, green, blue and yellow. It is hard to put into words what it was like because everything was morphing. It wasn't changing, however, the structures stayed the same and I could look around. Take a candy cane for example, the stripes of red and white will seem to travel up or down the candy cane when you spin it. That is a similar way these colors moved. It seemed that I was on a planet of some kind. I was standing on a ledge with my back against a wood fence, and the 3 beings were to my left. At the bottom of this cliff were buildings, like a small town. Past the buildings was a coastline and water. There was a sky with no sun in view and it was all morphing with colors too. I remember being utterly amazed. However, this place was not familiar to me like the green field was. The next thing I remember is flying through the sky with the light beings. It was like flying in a lucid dream but even more real. I started to trail behind as I noticed they were flying up to a city of white lights in the clouds. This city was very large and very bright. As I tried to keep up, I eventually ended up at a barrier. I couldn't see anything in front of me, but something was holding me back. As I stopped, the 3 beings all turned around and waved goodbye as I started to come back to reality. I found myself in my bed, lost in my covers. When I opened my eyes, the overlay of patterns and colors made it very hard to see what I was doing. I really felt like this human life was a dream and that I graduated to a higher dimension. Not just me, but every fellow Earthling graduated like it was a test and now we got to experience a higher level of reality. I eventually gave up with my blanket and laid back down. This is unfortunately where things took a turn for the worst. I am guessing I fell asleep while still tripping very hard. The next thing I remember is regaining consciousness inside a dark, scary, dysphoric world. "You did this to all of us," I heard someone grumble. I started to look around, and I had a knowing that every being in the universe was here. The only way I can describe it is to imagine you live in a game and that game gets corrupted. You're stuck in a distorted, corrupted, glitchy world where everything hurts and there's no way out. Everyone including myself was being stretched, pulled, folded, and pixelated in the most horrifying way. The discomfort and pain were almost too much to bear. It was like a car was on top of me and I had to puff my chest out to keep the car from crushing me entirely. This torment went on for what seemed like an eternity. I have never had an experience of eternity like this. Time lost all meaning and every painful moment was stretched to last forever. I woke up on the ground in my room. All I had on me at the time was underwear, and I filled those suckers up with my last meal. As I got up, I noticed my face was bruised and cut. I had rug burns all over my body and a fat bloody lip. My mouth was full of hair and cat litter from the carpet. It was obvious I was falling and rolling around because there was shit smeared all over me and the carpet. Thankfully the mushroom god steered me clear of my bed. I took a shower, cleaned my room, and eventually fell asleep after wondering what the hell just happened. The next day I found out my neighbors downstairs heard screaming coming from our apartment and they asked my female roommate if she was screaming the night before. I didn't remember until she told me about it. I'm a guy but what I was experiencing was so scary I screamed like a girl at the top of my lungs. I remember being in this hellish landscape, but I was also connected to my body and I have memories of screaming as hard as I could and puffing my chest out so much that I shit myself. I remember doing it even though I had no idea what was happening. Kind of embarrassing. But this is what can happen on shrooms if you're not careful. Honestly, if I didn't experience the horror of the bad trip, I would most likely ignore the dangers of psychedelics. I also have an addictive personality and this bad trip was exactly what I needed to experience to ensure I wasn't tempted to abuse them. I know many people think this is just a drug and it makes you see imaginary things. Maybe it is, it doesn't make it any less amazing to me. Even if this is all created in our minds, it's still incredible, don't you think? I know that these plants allow us to come face to face with the shadows and trauma we have buried inside of us, but I also have to wonder if they allow us a peek into other dimensions or realms. Maybe it raises our frequency to the point where we can perceive these other dimensions of reality. All I know is that these experiences were more real than real. It made this human existence feel like an ugly, black and white, low-quality cartoon. The other place was like 4K, ultra-high-definition VR. Coming back into your body feels like squeezing into a container that's too small. The only way to see outside of this container is through filters and screens. Once you break out of the container, you expand and get to see the world the way it really is. We don't realize how filtered our experiences are until we see beyond them and have something to compare them to. The amazing thing for me is that I used to have dreams as a child of 3 beings. They were characters in my dreams. When I was 7, I had a dream about these 3 mini horses. They could talk to me, and I could talk to them. I remember they were my best friends in this dream. They were playing with me, and when the dream ended, I started crying. It felt like I had 3 best friends who I could never see again or who died. I distinctly remember waking up and instantly feeling dread and lonely and I guess homesick, but I got over it and went on with my life, completely putting it to the back of my mind. Another dream I had wasn't as interesting, but there were 3 boos, the ghosts from Mario, and I had that same feeling like they were my best friends and sadness again when I woke up. I had these dreams quite a few times as a kid, and most dreams don't leave a big impact on me. These dreams were different. I could never get them out of my mind. It was like I was missing something important and I couldn't remember it. These dreams were never lucid, but they were beyond vivid and intense. I always remember feeling like the dream lasted for hours. I don't think it's a coincidence that I dreamt of these beings before I knew about them. There is something going on here. I'm not saying the characters in the dreams were real, but maybe they were a projection created by memories in my subconscious mind. The fact that I had dreams of these beings all the time as a kid fascinates me to no end. This experience sounds cheesy and delusional when I write it, but I wanted to write it out exactly how I remember it. This experience had many similar themes to DMT and near-death experiences. I have never done DMT personally, but the stories people tell are sometimes so accurate to what I experienced that I get flashbacks. Thank you everybody, for listening to my story. If you have any experiences similar to mine, leave a brief comment. I have never heard of another trip report like this other than on DMT. Also make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed and definitely subscribe to Trip Reports. Thanks guys.